Now it is time to move on to spraying the next coatings. After the finishing tapes have been applied, the tape edges smoothed out with the little iron and so forth, it's time to start spraying. We will be demonstrating the rest of the polyfiber process using the horizontal stabilizer covered earlier in the video. Read pages 75 through 77 in your manual before starting to spray. These pages discuss in detail the type of equipment to use when spraying, as well as points on cleanliness and mixing. The first coating to spray is more polybrush. The idea here is to get enough polybrush on the surface to get a slight gloss on the finishing tapes. First, prepare the polybrush by thinning it 3 parts polybrush to 1 part reducer. Pour it into the spray gun through a 60 by 48 mesh paint strainer. If you've never painted before, we strongly suggest that you practice on something besides your airplane. Old wall paneling, an old door, whatever you can find. Practice with the piece positioned vertically and horizontally. Learn everything about your spray gun system before trying it out on the plane. Before spraying, clean the surface with C2210 paint cleaning solvent. Be very careful not to wet the tape edges. If you do, they may lift. If this happens, iron them back down before continuing. Wipe the surface gently with the tack cloth. Position the surface horizontally if possible. This will help to avoid runs. We are going to apply 1 mist coat and 2 full coats of polybrush to the surface of this stabilizer. Again, the objective is for the finishing tapes to show a slight gloss. Start by spraying the mist coat over the entire surface. Begin with the perimeter and go all the way around the piece. A mist coat will just barely put a fine layer of polybrush over the surface without looking wet. You do this by moving the gun with enough speed over the surface to prevent a lot of concentration. Or you can do the same thing by lightening the trigger pull on your gun. The idea is to spray an even, light, and level coat of polybrush over the entire surface. Notice how you pull the trigger and stop. Pull and stop. Pull and stop. Pull and stop. Each pass overlaps the last one by about 30%. The gun is always held parallel to the surface. After about 15 minutes, respray over the mist coat. This time you will put on enough polybrush to look wet and shiny, like the surface of a pond on a windless day. Again, start with the perimeter. Now for the technique of cross-coating. First, go down the entire surface in one direction, in this case parallel to the ribs. It really doesn't matter which direction you start, parallel or perpendicular to the ribs. Once this first coat is tacky and the polybrush doesn't come off on your finger if you touch it, you can spray the second coat. Here's how you cross-coat. Remember, spray the perimeter first. The first coat was sprayed parallel to the ribs. The second coat will be sprayed perpendicular to the ribs. Crossing the first coat is cross-coating. Your polyfiber manual describes cross-coating as painting one coat east-west and the next coat north-south. Good way of looking at it. One cross-coat is 2 coats of paint. One coat east-west and the other north-south. If you notice small bubbles forming as you spray, you must stop and take care of them. Brush them away with the tip of a small brush. Keep brushing until they stop forming. It may be necessary to dip the end of the brush in a little MEK so it will slide over the surface more smoothly.